I think what's going to happen here, you're also going to see the pro-life movement look at this. You know, it's going to have something to say there. If you'll remember, Ruby Ridge, Waco, these are cases where the ATF and the FBI came within a state for something that was not going outside that state, and they went on a killing spree.
Right. Well, and what is beautiful about what Hardin has done here is he has taken this and we get this done at the state level. We don't have to go to the county militias and get the counties all involved. Although we should be getting our sheriffs involved and getting our sheriffs behind these kinds of movements, because our sheriffs already should be protecting us from the killer, the FBI killers, the ATF killers, the federal killers that are out there who can be stopped by the locals, and it's generally the sheriff that'll be stopping them. And unfortunately, I've had this conversation with our sheriff, and with sheriffs across the state, and they do not get this. The whole Sheriff Mac constitutional sheriff concept is not yet accepted widely within Oklahoma. And we need to make it happen.
I give them a break on this. I know Oldham doesn't. He's less forgiving than I am, but I do understand that law enforcement are not constitutional law scholars. And
neither am I.
But they're in the law enforcement.
They're just about upholding the law.
Trust me. I wish that they were.
Yeah.
I wish that they were. But there are thousands, if not tens of thousands, of differing interpretations, right or wrong or indifferent, of the Constitution by law departments in dozens of states and thousands of universities.
I want to just spring off of that, because in the state question 807, this medical marijuana thing, one of the corrections they made in there actually was something I gave them. I'm like, I'm telling Ryan Kiesel, ACLU, because one of the things they said about that, the plants that somebody grows can't be seen from the street. And I said, you know what you mean, but I said, you're not saying what you mean. And he said, well, in someplace else. I said, no. You got to write this, not so some judge or lawyer knows it. You've got to write this plain enough that the cop working the night shift understands it. And I think that's your point there, is when we make things so construed in the statutory code, we make it really hard for the people who are, where the rubber meets the road.
Except this is really simple, and they don't have an excuse.
No, I get that. I'm getting it. But what I'm saying is, D'Ambrosa's got a point here in that the U.S. Constitution is simply written on just a few pieces of paper here.
But the spirit behind it is what a cop should be upholding.
Oh, absolutely.
And a law that violates the spirit of the law, if the cop doesn't understand the spirit of the law, he should not be a cop.
I agree with you.
Period.
And a cop that has a philosophical bent of his own...
Then he shouldn't be a cop.
Right?
Should not.
I agree with that. But you've got to make it so plain. And this is what I like about what Hardin said. I say this is why it reads like a revival meeting here. He makes this very clear where there is no wiggle room for a cop who's for gun control. He leaves no wiggle room.
Right.
And we have to be careful on these things. It's just like I told Chip Paul. You understood what you meant when you said a 7% tax on marijuana sales. But you didn't say sales tax, so the idiots down there at the tax commission says, we're going to call that an excise tax, and now it's going to be 16% instead of 7%. So that's my point here, is when you're writing good law, you've got a standard, and you've got to make it understandable also to the citizen who has to live under it.
Well, there's that, but the thing is that good law never violates a right. Not any single person's rights. This is the problem with the pro-life or the abolition movement, is they don't get that their law could violate somebody's rights.
That's true.
And so therefore, and they had been unwilling to hear it.
Explain.
So
Who's right?
the problem is that you deal with the murder, you don't say you can't have an abortion, because that would outlaw basically a DNC for something,
A miscarriage. It's
a
already
miscarriage.
happened. Yeah.
And you could end up being declared a murderer and suffer for it just because of the
Yes.
way the law is written.
I agree.
And so
They need to write their proposed legislation more precisely.
well, and we need to take it. We need to take it and attack these issues to the problem at hand,
Yeah.
not do what they accuse the pro-life movement of doing, is taking it around the bend, and by so doing, continue the practice.
Yeah, and let me clarify what that was with Ryan Kiesel. It's about the plants being seen from the road. I said, no. I said, must be identifiable as marijuana.
Yeah, but the point is, it doesn't matter if
That's
they can be seen. I have the right to have it.
No, that's a separate issue. But for a cop to say, "Oh, there's something green over there," you just violated the law, and like, you don't know if that's a cedar tree.
Well, and that's the problem with 807. Folks
Right.
do not sign either 807 or 808 at this point.
Yeah.
They both are horrific the way they
Yeah.
are written. And as much as
I got news on that. I ran a poll on the Oklahoma MMA Facebook group I run. 239, I think, of the patients said we don't support either 807 or
Good.
88. Only 6 support 807, and even less than that support 808.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's like 97, 98% of
Right.
patients, people already licensed in smoking,
Invested
are
personally,
saying,
yeah.
no, we don't like either of those two.
Right.
So, I want to commend the good sense of the people.
You know, before we get too far away from the police and how they apply, what is the response I wanted to have to your spirit of the law statement was that what is simple, which is so simple, what is simple in the spirit is not so easily executed. It's hard to live by the spirit, isn't it?
No.
Ask the different.
No, it is not.
Ask the 6,000 sects of
it is hard.
Christianity.
And I do know that when I was working at the Cherokee Casino, there was at least 4 different jurisdictions before you got to the spirit of the law and all of the analysis of how this will play out in court later. When you've got an existential threat or something that needs to be dealt with now, the cop would have to come in, and before he could do anything, he'd have to know, am I in Tulsa County or one of 3 different Indian districts?
Yeah.
And so he's thinking, I got to know where I'm at before I arrest this guy.
Yeah.
Just to know what the application of the arrest is.
Yeah.
And then worry about, the spirit of the law. So
it sounds like in that one, the spirit of the law was, you got to deal with it because there's a crime going on.
that's what
If there's
cops
a
have
real
to deal with is existential threat.
Spirit itself even refers
Well,
to essentially divine
no,
understanding
enforcement is-
outside of
what
logic.
enforcement is.
Well, an existential, seeing a plant from the street is not an existential threat. We are.
I know.
So.
But the
let's-
statement you were making was a little more general in that these cops need to arrest people with the spirit of the law. That's not the way it goes down.
No. The
They
way that
exercise
they treat
enforcement
people
first,
is.
and then you
I
go
don't know,
back
guys.
to that.
Have you seen Little Shop of
spirit.
Horrors? Maybe a plant
Oh,
could be an existential threat.
Yeah,
Let's not make sweeping
Well,
statements.
what happens when you're in an agency and you're tasked with creating rules to implement some, when it's a government program, the government's doing something like this, is a lot of times they get so buried in the weeds and how it's done,
In the
before
weeds.
they know it, they've already violated something that's in the statute that was written or passed by the people.
Oh, absolutely.
And so you can get so lost in the weeds.
The OMMA is
Exactly.
prime example of that.
Exactly that.
But why? Because they did not start with a mindset of living by the spirit of the law. Because if they had done that, the OMMA wouldn't even exist.
That's
We've
true.
said it a million times.
So-
Lawmakers, more often than not, use the law as a vehicle to achieve their agenda.
Oh, absolutely.
Whether their agenda is lawful or not.
Well, what did Thomas Jefferson say? He said, "Rightful liberty is the free action of the will, and insofar as it does not run afoul of another, and I do not say of the law, because the law often is just the tyrant's will.
Yeah.
And so the point is that laws are often just tyrannical.
Is it like the
at
Bart
heart.
Simpson, Lisa Simpson conflict where he's windmilling and she's kicking and saying, listen, I'm not going to hit you, but if you run into this, it's your fault.
Right. Hey, we got to wrap.